Good afternoon, and welcome back to another episode of West Valley Workforce Success Series and the first of 2024. I'm Lauren Serrato, WESTMARC Special Events and Media Relations Coordinator. And today our focus is on housing, workforce housing, transportation, and childcare. And we gathered the perfect panel to touch on each of them. But first, I want to take a second and thank our sponsor of our segment today, Banner Health. I say it to anyone that will listen. WESTMARC has so many opportunities, endless opportunities for the region, for organizations, small businesses, nonprofits to promote the West Valley and get engaged. But none of it would be possible without our sponsors and our partners. So I want to take the moment to thank them and enjoy a video from our Banner Health sponsors.
Life is full of moments you don't want to miss. Wherever you may be, Banner Health makes taking control of your healthcare simple, so you can get back to what you really want to do. This is care that meets you where you are.
And again, thank you, Banner Health. We appreciate your sponsorship and your continued partnership and support. Now on with the show. So like I said, we gathered a very impressive panel today. And if you don't mind going down the line, introducing yourself and the organization you represent, please. Starting.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having the Maricopa Association of Governments, and I'm Chief of Staff.
Good afternoon. My name is Seth Dyson. I work for the City of Surprise, and I'm the Director of our Human Service and Community Vitality Department.
And hello, my name is Angela Rabago, and I lead our external affairs team at First Things First, which is our state's early childhood agency.
Excellent. Now, like our panelists, just introduce ourselves, and as we know, the topic, three very different but very important topics. So each have prepared a presentation to tell a bit about their organization, what they're doing in the region, and how we can help. We're going to start with Audra today.
Well, thank you again on behalf of the 32 different mayors, supervisors, and Native Nation presidents that comprise the Maricopa Association of Governments. We're really pleased to be here today to talk about the importance of transportation to development of the workforce. I think sometimes we take for granted transportation investments as part of our daily lives, but it's been really intentional here in the greater Phoenix region. If you've been here for any length of time, you've seen the development grow right before your eyes. And that's because of the investment that we all have made to that transportation system. And I'm going to talk a little bit today, not only about that history, but also its future with a proposed continuation of a dedicated half-cent sales tax first established by voters back in 1985 that has really led to the prosperity, economic prosperity we've seen here in the greater Phoenix metropolitan area. That dedicated half-cent sales tax was first established, as mentioned, back in 1985. Mayors got together to ask the Arizona Department of Transportation how long it might take with existing funding sources to build the initial Loop 101. And the answer that was received was 60 years. For those who don't want to do any math today, that means that we still would not have been able to build the Loop 101. And so getting together with the business community, mayors asked residents of Maricopa County to establish, at the time, one of the first dedicated half-cent sales taxes in the country to deliver a multimodal transportation system. And it was resoundingly supported by voters in 1985, followed subsequently 20 years later with a continuation of that dedicated tax. We'll talk a little bit more today about ultimately what that has delivered. So this is the system that was what life looked like back in 1985 and 86. We're here at WESTMARC, and so you'll see that little gold star reflecting where we are today. We really only had I-17, even Interstate 10 that goes ocean to ocean, coast to coast was not yet complete. Through the Deck Park Tunnel in Phoenix, that wasn't done until the early 1990s. This is what Proposition 300, that first 20-year sales tax, delivered. The Loops 101, 202, the 51, and 143 developed over the course of 20 years. And as mentioned, followed by another 20-year investment known today as Proposition 400, that delivered the Loop 303, the South Mountain Freeway opening a few years ago, helping to deliver light rail and streetcar investments throughout the region, including initiating SR 24 in the Southeast Valley. What you don't see mapped here are millions of miles of bus service that help to connect our large region. Constituents, workers don't see city and municipal borders, nor do they with our transportation system. It needs to be contiguous, and we're able to deliver regional transit solutions because of Proposition 400. It's also the backbone of our ADA paratransit service. We've been able to deliver over 250 miles of arterial roads, that grid network on the mile, which is so unique to this region. It actually carries about half of us to our jobs every single day. It's also the backbone of our transit system, as well as our bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure as well. Ultimately, the results of this 40 years of a transportation investment saves on average about 100 hours every single year, the freeway network alone, time that we spend with our families, going and doing fun things, getting to explore the region. Notably for today's presentation, over 80% of the jobs, I think our latest numbers are closer to 83% of jobs are located within a mile or two of a freeway or a light rail corridor, recognizing how important it is to connect economic employment opportunities with our transportation system, as well as transportation unlocking economic potential. In these last 20 years, average valuation in Maricopa County grew 150%. So transportation investment brings wealth and prosperity. It's also our competitive advantage. Our friends at the Texas A&M Transportation Institute routinely rank this system having the lowest travel times, levels of congestion, as well as the highest travel time reliability. And I want to take a moment to pause on that. That's a system that's been built just over the last 40 years compared to other parts of the country. We've been able to deliver this fantastic transportation investment that has brought a really high quality of life to a really large geography. And certainly we see the benefits of it every day. Here's another depiction of that same jobs and transportation connection. This is from the Greater Phoenix Economic Partnership and their number of locates in the last 30 years. You'll see they're all adjacent to the freeway system, the transportation system for which this region has intentionally built. We spent the better part of the last 5 years developing a new long-range plan. The existing sales tax expires at the end of 2025. Our tremendous growth, particularly out here in the West Valley, certainly indicates we need to continue to develop transportation solutions. And so we've worked with our local agency stakeholders and gotten great feedback from the public to develop a new long-range plan that would be supported by a continuation of a dedicated half-cent sales tax. This is a map showing a lot of the important investments. I won't go through them tediously, but I do want to note several of them, including the establishment of the SR 30 in the Southwest Valley. It's our single largest project in our economic portfolio, over $6 billion to develop what's often referred to as the I-10 reliever, recognizing the tremendous amount of growth pressure that we're seeing out here in the West Valley. Completion of the Loop 101, adding capacity down to the connect to the 303, or excuse me, the 30, finishing out the 303 on the north, complete rehabilitation of I-17, that initial piece of infrastructure for those who've been here in the region for a while, but also a number of arterial investments, that grid network where we're reimagining, rehabilitating, expanding the arterial grid network. Over 1,000 miles we've identified as part of this plan. I want to take a special note onto the left side of this slide where we have specific transit investments identified. We're nearly doubling the amount of funding the region supports for bus transit. We heard that was a high priority, particularly stretching the transit system out to the far west and the far east valley where it doesn't currently exist, connecting more people to jobs, to school, to entertainment opportunities. This is a high priority. We heard from public involvement. We've also heard it being an important backbone for workforce development, providing opportunities for people to get to jobs. I also want to highlight Proposition 400 and proposed for the extension of Proposition 400 or 479. We have funding dedicated to continue programs like Van Pool. These are small solutions where employers work with small groups of employees and provide a transportation resource that's subsidized, allowing a small group of you at a specific office location to commute to work together, providing the van itself. It costs approximately $5 a day for most folks. Oftentimes businesses pick up that cost and provide it as an amenity to their employees. These are the kinds of solutions, recognizing there isn't just one transportation solution to fit all problems here in this growing, expansive valley. We've identified a variety of different tools, something that we heard was a high priority when we did public involvement. This is another slide that depicts ultimately the outcomes if 479 is passed by voters this November. I won't spend a tremendous amount of time on this slide either, just to illustrate that there's a variety of different solutions and needs that exist in the region. We've built a plan to accommodate those, including recognizing emerging technologies and not knowing what the future holds, but wanting to make sure that we're prepared and can be nimble when new technologies and opportunities exist. Ultimately, if implemented, these series of investments bring tremendous value to the region. We're expecting over 30,000 new and sustained jobs year over year over the term of the investment. Compared to doing nothing, we expect 68% fewer road segments and a failing level of service, meaning congestion with red tail lights in the afternoons. We're expecting 66% more people to have access to high capacity transit options. We expect to cut the afternoon commute by a third, reducing congestion daily for critical freight corridors by over 51,000 hours. And I think this final point is really important. The average daily commute here for the region, folks who live here in the region, is about 30 minutes. With these planned investments in the year 2050, we're still projecting to have a 30-minute driving commute, even after adding 2 million more people and 1 million more jobs, because we're getting ahead of that, recognizing development is occurring and having proactive transportation investments. And it's important to note that that 30-minute commute is still shorter than the average daily commutes in places like Los Angeles, Houston, Chicago, and other areas for which we compete for not only high quality jobs, but also for folks to find a place to call home. So with that, that completes my presentation. I'll hand over.
Thank you very much. We, as the city of Surprise, we did a community needs assessment, and transportation was one of the top issues and concerns for our residents. So there's parts of our city that with lots of congestion. So thank you for laying out some of the pathways forward. Good afternoon again. I'm honored to be here. I've got some friends online watching, so I hope I do you solid. But I'm Seth with the City of Surprise. My topic is workforce housing. I'm honored to be here. I'm not the expert of workforce housing whatsoever, but my past workforce development experience really allows me to kind of learn more about this and tell you kind of what we've been doing, what we've been learning about. And I know from workforce development experience, we ask our businesses and employers all the time, what keeps you up at night? And I can tell you where your employees live, their housing may be keeping your employees up at night. So as we look at talent attraction and retention, what your employees are concerned about could be housing, could be childcare, it's definitely transportation. So I'll walk you through some of the things that we've learned and found. But we're here because of the housing demand. So as you heard, that there's growth happening now, there's growth happening that will be happening in the future. And I borrowed this slide from our economic development team. We have 5,000 people moving to Surprise generally every year. Our population is expected to grow very quickly. So is the rest of the West Valley. So we know that, housing is not just an issue of today, it's an issue of tomorrow. Where are people gonna live and what type of housing are they gonna live in? So we, as the city of Surprise, commissioned a study on our housing, portfolio. And so we wanted to share a little bit about what we learned. We did that because of the demand, and because what we learned is that we generally have an unbalanced housing stock. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. My question to you as an employer, as a business, as the industry, where do your employees live right now? You have that data. I think it'd be a neat exercise for you to go and look at where all of your current employees are. WESTMARC's done a phenomenal job of kind of identifying where the West Valley workforce is. But I'd encourage you to challenge you to look into where your current employees are. And I think I skipped a slide here, sorry. But before I do that, I wanted to talk about workforce housing as a definition. See if I can go back here. I'm sorry. There it is. Workforce housing as a definition. So as you do your scan of where your employees are, you and I both live in workforce housing, whether we call it that or not, right? And so all of us have different sizes of housing, where we started, when we started our career, when we were training for our career, where we live now. So I wanted to change the perception a little bit about what workforce housing is and what it's not. So the inclusive definition is where you and your employees live. The general definition is generally those households that live or earn above the 30% median income line to then afford housing. So they earn too much to qualify for subsidized housing, basically. Then a definition of exactly what workforce housing is. Some people use the 60 to 120% of area median income. So for Surprise, our example, if our area median income was 87,000, that gives you the range of what the workforce housing definition would be there. And then in general, if you don't know, the U.S. Housing Urban Development is defined, if you have to pay more than 30% of your income, generally you're paying more for housing than your housing is not affordable to you at that point. So I just wanted to set that definition. So our study went and looked into, well, what does it look like in Surprise and the West Valley? We know our rents are up, so our average rent today is about $1,800 a month. So I'll share a little bit more about rent in the next slide. But there are a percentage of our employees and our residents that are cost burdened. And that percentage, unfortunately, is growing. And I think other cities in the West Valley are seeing the exact same thing. The rents are up. So as soon as 2025, we'll have over 1,000 households that will be cost burdened by certain housing. And what we found is that we have a supply gap of both kind of affordable units and luxury units, both in the rental and the owner spheres. So again, where you live is workforce housing. Where your starter, your entry-level employee lives is workforce housing. In Surprise, and generally, this is not just Surprise specific. Generally, all of our West Valley cities have kind of a diversification gap that I think the market's going to try to help fill in. In our three largest industries, some of our earnings, they are paying 41 to 66% of their median earning just to pay their rent. So again, our biggest takeaway is that we have right now an unbalanced housing stock. So what our consultants did is they broke it out into different tiers of, well, what is attainable, what is affordable, what is workforce, what is market rate. And so this is kind of specific to our study, but we wanted to show you kind of how they pulled it out. And then what they found from a demand side, a supply side, and then the gaps. So you can see right away, we have some affordable housing gaps and then some luxury housing gaps. But one of the things I wanted to point out specifically in this slide was the affordable and the workforce. Even though the colors are not in red, those units are all filled by people that need luxury and market rate and need affordable. So that's not really a gap. It's where the existing workforce is living. And so, but it was nice to actually put some numbers to what are we seeing out there. So we need more luxury market rate units. And those are both single family homes. Those are both, apartments, luxury apartments, affordable apartments, condos, townhomes, et cetera. As I mentioned, our rents are continuing to grow, and this slide is actually a little bit outdated. I mentioned $1,800 is our average rent right now in Surprise. But you can see from the West Valley, from our study, rents are continuing to go up. So you'll see some reports out in the paper that, rents might go down a percentage or two, but in general, if they're still up 20 or 30% over the past 10 years, ultimately the wages haven't kept up with the market here in the rents. And so your employees will be experiencing that if they're renting. So in the Surprise area, we have about 1 in 4 residents that rent. And so if a good percentage of those are cost burden, that is going to keep your employee up at night. And then it could potentially lead to them maybe looking somewhere else to get a better job or move somewhere where they can afford maybe more affordable living. And so one of the things we found too was the housing stock. Again, it's not as diversified as maybe some of the other cities. And again, this is just growing pains as the West Valley. We expect the West Valley to continue to grow. So the market has brought us a lot of single family homes. That was the demand. There's still a demand for single family homes, so we want to keep focusing on that. But you can see we have 87% of our community is single family. I give a nod to Glendale. I think you see a little bit more diversification there. And ultimately, I think we chalk that up to them being around longer, they're bigger, they've had more time to do infill. We know as a West Valley, we're going to have a more diversified housing stock, but right now, our pace isn't keeping up with the growth. And so it's going to remain an issue. Workforce housing will remain an issue as we continue to grow as West Valley. Wanted to point this out. So we have lots of businesses here on the Zoom call. We found in our study, we broke out by industry some of the earnings per median gross rent. And so the red line there illustrates the 30% affordability rent for rentals by median gross rent. So our top 3 industries on the bottom by volume, you can see they're paying 116% of their median gross rent, compared to only 3 of our industries are paying single earners now a wage enough to be able to afford to be considered affordable. Again, this is single earnings. This is not people living together, but there's quite a few of our residents that are single earners because of some cost of childcare and transportation. All these things are weaved in, which is a good thing that we're all here today. It's important to kind of know what industries are facing and some of the challenges. So finally, we need just more diversified workforce. So we need all types of housing. We need more single family. We need more multifamily. And one of the things that we found in our study, and that other folks have found this in studies too, like the Arizona Housing Coalition, is we are missing the middle parts. So a lot of workforce development folks talk about career pathways. We really need housing pathways, right? So to start from an apartment to go straight into a single family may be a big jump right now. And I think that's what the market is showing us. So to qualify for your first time home may be more challenging now than it was. So there are groups out there that offer incentives for down payment assistance. That could be something that employers want to offer their residents as a benefit, employee benefit perk. But generally, we like to have a more diversified housing stock, especially the duplexes and the fourplexes and the condos and the townhomes that we may not have yet in the West Valley. There's been some discussion at the federal level about how do we incentivize the workforce housing component? Again, the above 30%, so 60 to 80 to 120%. That's not really gone anywhere yet, but it's something that I encourage you to keep an eye on. There's examples out there of businesses and employers investing in housing for their own employees. In Arizona, we've had this for a long time with our mining communities and and different industries. But you hear, Microsoft and Apple and Meta and all the big industries are now investing in workforce housing for their employees just to attract and retain the talent. I'd like to highlight some of our friends from the Vitalist Health Foundation. They've actually put a toolkit together for any of the school districts out there who are interested in housing, and it's specifically workforce housing. We know that's been a challenge for some of our educational partners. They put a whole toolkit together to talk about this. There's some existing conversation at the state level about letting other faith communities allow them to build housing on their properties to help bring in more units. And then I'd like to highlight one of our partners, Foreman and Company. They helped us build Heritage at Surprise. They not only build affordable, permanent supportive housing, other housing. They have some really neat examples, and they totally didn't know I was going to call them out. But they've been working and producing workforce units in Vail, Colorado. So again, for the industry to attract and retain the talent there. So they'd be a good person to look into if you'd like to learn more about workforce housing. And then finally, just from an anecdotal standpoint, we run a Surprise Resource Center. We know that people are moving from Surprise now to find a place that they can afford. And we put everything in perspective. So we have folks moving to Arizona because we are totally affordable, right? But we have some folks that are here that are being priced out now for some of the market. And so it's important for us to kind of hear both things, see both things. For us, we offer rent assistance and utility assistance, and we get asked every single day, where's an affordable place to live? Where can I, where's the cheapest rent? And we can't, as a government entity, refer to one place over another. It's been one of the biggest challenges, but we've unfortunately we've seen people relocate their families into different areas out of state and in other areas of the region, just because they've been kind of priced out of our rental market. All that to say is we have thousands of units coming in. They're in the pipeline for multifamily and Surprise and single family residents. We're not seeing a downturn in our permit activity or anything like that. So that's really good news. So I think the market is still bringing us units. I think the big question is what type of units are coming in, and then what can we as leaders and then as the industry do to help attract some of the maybe the missing middle. So with that, I'll pause because I'm sure I went way too long, and I'll turn it up to you.
Thank you. Well, we have heard about transportation, we've heard about housing, and now I'm here to talk about a third critical infrastructure issue, which is childcare. So like many states, our state faces a childcare crisis. There's limited childcare options, and it's more expensive than ever before. Business and economic development leaders like the Arizona Chamber here on the screen say that access to affordable, accessible childcare is one of the biggest barriers to workforce recruitment and retention efforts. As Arizona's early childhood agency, First Things First funds early childhood programs and services across the state, including here in the West Valley. We invest about $46 million a year in childcare scholarships so that more low-income families can afford quality childcare. In the West Valley, that equals about nearly $7 million each year. We also invest about $18 million across the state, working directly with childcare providers to improve the quality of care in their centers and homes. Here in the West Valley, that equals about $1.6 million per year. So when we look at the West Valley, there's a total of about 84,000 young children, infants, toddlers, and preschoolers who live here in our area. And of those, 60% live in households where all adults work. So that really helps us to see that childcare plays a critical role in ensuring that parents can go to work, that young children can learn, and that our economy can thrive. With many industries and employers facing workforce shortages, we really need to ensure that childcare isn't one of the barriers for them. When we look at the state of childcare in Arizona, we see that even before the pandemic, childcare was challenging to afford and challenging to find. Nearly half of our state is a childcare desert. And childcare is very expensive. When you look at the cost of even just 1 year of infant care for one infant, that is more than the cost of a year of college tuition at one of our state universities. So it's very challenging for families. Infant care is the most expensive. For that one infant, care costs about 20% of the median family income. And the standard for affordable care, when we talk about affordability, is about 7% of median family income. So of course, that's way above what affordability is. So looking at our state as a whole, as I said earlier, much of our state is a childcare desert based on the sheer number of children under age 6 who may need childcare. We have about a 25% gap statewide in the actual existing supply of childcare slots. Here in the greater Phoenix area, you can see that we have about 215,000 young children who may need childcare, but only about 174,000 childcare slots that exist. So you can see that gap here in our area is about 21.4%. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation recently did an analysis to see what is this costing states across the U.S. And when looking at the impact in Arizona, this is what they found. Arizona loses about 1.7 billion annually to childcare challenges. This includes absences and employee turnover and also loss in tax revenue. And when we look at the impact on families, it's even more stark. We recently did an informal survey of working parents of young children. Out of about 700 responses, 73% said that their childcare options have decreased, and 35% report having left a job due to childcare issues. 82% have missed work sometime in the last year due to childcare issues. And again, we look at the cost issue. The cost of childcare is hitting our working families so hard. 90% reported that their childcare costs have increased over the past year. So when we look at the childcare industry, we like to say that it really is the industry that helps to uphold every other sector of our economy. Childcare allows parents to work. It allows businesses to recruit and retain workers, and it's an investment in our future workforce. Those young kids who are in care today are going to be in our workforce in 20 years from now. So we have to look at that two-generation approach for today's workforce as well as the future workforce. Recently, we've seen a lot of national attention come to the childcare issue. Lawmakers recently passed the CHIPS and Science Act, which invests about $200 billion over 5 years to help return semiconductor chip manufacturing to the U.S. The law isn't specifically about childcare, but the Commerce Department, as part of that law, is now requiring companies to provide a childcare access plan to ensure that their workforce is going to have access to childcare. This is a first of its kind commitment, and it's going to be essential to getting people, especially women, into this growing workforce. A recent review of research on childcare costs and women's labor supply shows that even just a 10% decrease in childcare costs means that 0.5 to 2.5% increase in maternal employment. So more women are able to enter the workforce. That effect is even stronger for mothers who have lower incomes. And we know that if women participated in the labor force at the same rate as men, there would be more than 10 million additional workers available. So whatever we can do to make it easier for women to join the workforce is really critical to economic development. So after the pandemic, in order to hold up what was really a failing childcare infrastructure, the federal government made the largest investment in childcare in history. That brought about 1.3 billion into Arizona to help uphold that childcare infrastructure here in our state. Without that funding, about a third of providers said that they would have had to close their doors, which would have put us back even further. However, those federal funds do run out at the end of this summer. So it's really an imperative for us all at the table to think about how do we find some long-term solutions to this essential industry. And we do think that businesses have a role to play in a way that you all can help with this. We need your support. We need to help policymakers understand the impact that the childcare crisis is having on individual businesses. We want everyone to support public policy solutions that might include local, state, or federal funding for early learning. We have a calculator tool on our website, firstthingsfirst.org, that allows individual businesses to put in just a couple of data points about your employees. And then it estimates what the childcare crisis could be costing your business. So I encourage everyone to go find out, learn a little bit more about the challenges that working families in your business face. Go to our website, firstthingsfirst.org, and hit that button to take action and see what this means for your business. Thank you.
Thank you all. I'll be honest, when Kevin came to me, Kevin is our Director of Workforce Development. When he came to me and told me that we're gonna have housing, childcare, and transportation all in one webinar, not sure how it's gonna go, but I'm not to Kevin, this all melded. Each and every single one of these topics affect not only workforce, but a person's quality of life and keeping our talent here as well as attracting them. So we're gonna jump into our questions part of the webinar. I encourage you to jump in the chat, drop a question for our panelists, but I'd love to start with Audra. So I'm really curious about the public and what their impact was and what their thoughts were as the plan was developing for this whole amount of time and maybe their priorities.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So we started plan development over 5 years ago. We actually started distinctly with public involvement and public outreach before we did anything else. We wanted to know a lot about what people value most in this region, why they moved here, why they continue to live here, because we wanted to protect those things as part of the transportation plan, even if they're not necessarily overtly transportation related. What makes this place special so that we can preserve it as part of the transportation plan. And what we heard then were that people really love the opportunity to pick the community they want to live in, and that there's a regional transportation system that gets them the other places they need to go, whether it's jobs, education. Obviously, we have tremendous amenities throughout the region. That was a high value of folks who live here in Maricopa County. So we recognized we wanted to preserve that people valued that opportunity. We heard that people want lots of choices and different choices for how they get around. And recognize also that the choice that they may make isn't the same choice as you may make. And they recognize that diversity is really necessary. I think that's an important tie also to the workforce and recognizing how people need to get to the places they need to go or to the jobs. There isn't just one way to do that, and that people very much value having options. And so we heard that loud and clear. We also heard that folks have a tremendous amount of respect for the system that's been built. No one really knows who's responsible or who's in charge, but we got tremendous amount of feedback that's in support of the development activities, transportation investment activities. A lot of that's because people have moved from other places. We talked before we started today about everyone's origin story here to the region. A lot of people move here and they come from places that were proactive about investments in transportation, and they recognize what kind of constraints that can bring, as you noted, to quality of life. And so one of the things that we heard from our team when we did this distinct public outreach was people really like the direction of the transportation investments here, that we've added some amenities. Like it's attractive. It's not just ugly infrastructure, that it's attractive. We pick up trash, make sure things are clean. And those are high values of our residents that they wanted to continue. So I think what we heard loud and clear was that the priority to continue to develop a multimodal transportation system was strong. And that priorities to be able to get the places they want to go efficiently but safely was also a high priority.
Angela, transitioning to your slides, I noticed one of the last ones mentioned the relief funds. Tell me what those are used for and how it supports our families and how they can support their own childcare.
Sure. Over the last 3 years, those relief funds have gone to a variety of grants and supports for our childcare industry and for young children and their families. The majority, $726 million, went specifically to provide childcare providers some additional grant funding so that they could pay their workers more. We saw, like every industry, the childcare industry is facing a workforce shortage. And many of their employees can move to different industries that pay more and offer greater benefits. So that additional funding really helped to prevent more providers from leaving the industry. So that was an essential part of that funding relief.
Thank you. Now, Seth, when we talk about housing, we see posts on economic development sites of new apartments, housing being built. And of course, the public's gonna have their opinion, whether that's good or bad. Tell me how the city of Surprise makes sure that it's responsible housing development going up throughout the region.
Yeah, so, good question. I think we welcome all types of housing in Surprise. I think most of the West Valley, does that. We're very intentional about, inviting, diversity of housing in. And, I know with our planning teams, we talk about the quality of housing. We don't want just housing, we want quality of housing. So, for us, it's just a conversation about, what people need and where they want to go. And also where the housing goes is a big topic. And so, it's good to have a voice, in our community and someone to talk you through that. So where's the best development go and at a certain, location or timing. We in Surprise, I think, have been very proactive to have those conversations, and we welcome that conversation in, to make sure that the right housing fits in the right location. But again, the bottom line is we need all types of housing. We need luxury housing, we need attainable housing. And we're at a problem in the West Valley because everyone wants to live here, and that's a great problem to have. So kudos to all the businesses and WESTMARC and all the economic developers out there who keep, bringing in industry. This is a great time to be in the West Valley, and we're really excited to invite people to continue to come to West Valley. And so I'd encourage each of the developers, all the businesses that want to talk about workforce housing, come and engage with their local municipality, come and engage with WESTMARC on their plans. And we're happy to do what we can to help support them and achieve more units in that area.
Amazing. Now we have a few questions in the chat that I don't want to ignore, so let's jump into a few of them here. Perfect. So we have a first one coming. Are improvements for bike riders and pedestrians included in the overall MAG transportation plan? I'll leave this one to you.
Thank you. I'm so glad that question was asked. It's one of the things that we heard a tremendous amount of public support for. We also have an issue here in this region. We have a tragically high pedestrian and bicyclist crash and fatality rate, one of the highest in the country. It's a real issue, and it's in part because pedestrians and bicyclists are our most vulnerable users of the system. Because of that, we heard a high support for a continuation of building out bike and pedestrian infrastructure. And so we set aside 800 million for the course of the next 20 years to invest specifically in bike and ped. That's almost a fourfold increase in what we've invested the last 20 years in active transit, or what we call active transportation or non-motorized transportation, providing safe ways for our most vulnerable users to get from here to there.
Amazing, thank you. Let's jump into our next one here and scroll up a little bit. Sorry, there we go. One thought is co-location of housing and childcare, citing the project near transportation offerings. Have you seen this happen? Question.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of creative solutions being developed right now and tried out in different states across the country. One thing that I think of when we talk about pairing the housing and childcare together is we have a broad base of family childcare providers across the state. So some families choose, rather than having their child go to daycare in a center, they choose family-based care, which is a home-based center. So we're looking at ways to expand our home-based providers so that families can find someone in their neighborhood, someone who's nearby, near their housing, whether it's in an apartment or in a neighborhood, that they can trust to take care of their children and make sure that they're getting quality care in those areas too. So we're always looking at family choice and how do we look at that breadth of family choice and what they would like in their child.
Thank you. Our next one here says, is student transportation on a consideration in the regional transportation plan?
Yeah, it is. In fact, when we did our outreach we specifically even targeted youth as a way to make sure that we were getting feedback from the broad spectrum of users of the transportation system. And we've considered, again, multiple ways that we use a transportation system in any given day, setting aside funding for cities to invest in street improvements. We also have a program that focuses strictly on safe routes to school and how folks, as part of their family, can get kids safely to school. And we provide the planning expertise for that, but also the capital infrastructure money for making those improvements. And I also want to acknowledge how important the Valley Metro Transit System is for a lot of our school districts throughout the region. It is their primary or only transportation source to support or in partnership with schools. I'd also recognize how important the system is to supporting our higher educational opportunities across the region. One of the reasons that we've invested more in transit in the future is recognizing we need to further expand the transit system to connect out to outward nodes. And that's not just for population centers, but job and education centers as well. So I think the broad spectrum of transportation, and including school-aged children all the way through higher ed, was a priority we did here. And that's why there's a variety of transportation investment included.
You're talking to Angela. Everyone has a question for you. How can First Things First and other organizations work directly with companies that want to offer childcare, but not quite sure how to make that happen?
Sure. I encourage everybody to reach out to us on our website. We are looking at what is happening in other states and trying to replicate and maybe take some lessons learned from. For instance, in Colorado, they have recently instituted a grant funding program where they work with companies to do some retrofitting or to do some construction, some new construction, even in some cases, to offer on-site or near-site childcare. For big employers, that may make sense. If you have a lot of employees coming to a manufacturing site or a mining area or something, and you want to have near-site or on-site childcare, that might be an option that we can try and work together and look at.
Amazing. I see one in there for you, Seth. I'm going to throw this one to Audra first. Access to reliable, affordable, and safe transportation is key to workforce and community inclusion for people with disabilities. Was the disability community involved in the planning of the transportation?
Yeah, thank you for that question. They were. In fact, I acknowledged that as part of Proposition 400, the current half-cent sales tax, it is the dedicated funding source for the ADA paratransit service that we provide our most vulnerable users in the system, the disabled and or seniors and elderly folks. That is continued as part of the Proposition 479 plan. So while I can't advocate for or against 479, what I can tell you is that dedicated funding source would go away. And we heard priorities from the disability community, Ability 360, particularly very active in our plan engagement activities, how critical it is to be connected to a system, and particularly the light rail system that provides even boarding and provides freedom and mobility for their population, and how important that is to serve their community, and a tremendous amount of support for those kinds of investments moving forward.
Thank you. Seth, this question's for you. Do cities in the West Valley have excess land, maybe near libraries or community centers, where they could add housing?
I think it's a great question, and I think it's a great opportunity. In our city, we don't have a lot of excess land that Surprise owns, but the opportunity is there. And I think that's what people are picking up on, whether it's, the proposed legislation to allow building at a faith community. In Surprise, we're really excited to partner with Maricopa County and several other partners on multi-gen community resource center, where we have a little bit of land. We're able to work with the Housing Authority, Maricopa County, and Gorman to bring in 99 units of attainable senior housing, since we're seeing that as a need, because we had a little bit of land there. And so very excited about that. It's a $30 million investment in our community, right next to services that are available. So yes, I think we were able to get creative with that because we had a land provides you lots of opportunity. So So if there are folks interested in that, happy to talk more about that offline, but I would totally engage the communities out there to see what land is available and what those opportunities are. Because that model is very powerful and can be very strong for our communities to remain strong and to keep them reserved.
Is there funding set aside for new childcare center startups?
There's a lot of partners who are working, throughout the state right now, helping to support childcare providers, whether they're new or whether they've been in business. We've got about 3,000 who are connected with our DES Office of Childcare, receiving support from the federal relief funding that we talked about earlier. We have partners who are doing business practice training for childcare providers, which could help in the startup process, because we know that many childcare providers, they go into childcare because they love working with children. They don't necessarily have the business skills that they didn't plan to become accountants or to manage a staff and all of the intricacies that comes with that. So sometimes they just need a little bit of help in the business practice side of the business because they have the childcare side down.
Amazing. That time went so fast. I want to make sure to give everyone a chance to give closing remarks, maybe a call to action to our audience today. I'll begin with you, Audra, if you don't mind.
Well, thanks again on behalf of the American Association of Governments and our 32 elected leaders. Thanks for inviting us to this really important conversation where we're knitting together perhaps 3 diverse topics that are so critical to the support, the health and welfare of your constituents and residents here in the West Valley. What I would say is Proposition 479 is intentional. Again, it's building on the success of the last 40 years unique of this region. And ultimately, if it is not renewed, it's just going to cost you as a business owner more money. Specifically, it would cost you estimated $40 billion in excess travel time, $4.4 billion in additional shipping and logistics costs because your business entities are sitting in congestion, and ultimately come at a cost of over $113 billion in local business sales because we're not able to access your businesses and provide those opportunities. And so just a recognition of the tie of transportation to economic welfare.
Thank you, WESTMARC, for the invitation to be here. And thanks to all of you for supporting a diversified housing portfolio in the West Valley. We know we're going to get there, but we're not there yet. And we might not even be there in the near future because of the great growth that we're seeing. So my call to action is just to engage as a business community, as employers, research where your employees live. That data will be very telling of who's staying and who you're leaving, who's leaving your organization. So look at the data and then converse with your employees because we know if they're renting, probably they've got some housing pressure on them. So just engage with them, and then we're always happy to talk to you offline if there's ever any other housing questions that you may have. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, WESTMARC, again for the invitation to come here and talk a little bit about childcare along with these 2 other issues that are so important to our economy, our local economy, as well as statewide. My call to action for all of our business community would just be to be a voice for the needs of your employees. Since we have so many young children whose families are working families, we want to make sure that they receive the supports that they need. Right now, the governor has seen this as a priority and has included in her budget proposal, $100 million one-time investment in childcare subsidy for our lowest income families so that they can afford childcare in their area. So we're hoping to see that go for fiscal year 25. That would help prevent a wait list of about 5,000 children. Again, these are working families who need childcare in order to keep working.
Okay, well, I want to thank all 3 of you for being here today. I want to thank the audience for your continued support of WESTMARC, of the West Valley, and workforce. I encourage you to join us next time on May 15th as we focus on technology in the workforce. Same time, same place. Make sure to register on our website at westmarc.org. Again, thank you all for being here and thank you all for your support. Have a great rest of your day.